Welcome to Westfox. We have a wrap-up show here talking about our brotherly predictions about Star Trek Picard and kind of our full season review thoughts and kind of looking at the entire show of what it was, what it wasn't, and if we were right or wrong about things that we thought it was going to be. And mostly we were right, so we can kind of sum that up there. But we will dig into it more because each point does have some relatively interesting thoughts into it all. But we were also saying that, in general, the formula of Star Trek has been, you always have a kind of a Spock Data character, and Seven kind of filled that role in Voyager. So we're just,
Seven in the
show.
EMH, I would say. A little bit of, the Doctor was kind of also a little bit of that type, maybe not in the same way, but he was kind of always building more than his programming.
Yeah.
Sure. And the Doctor and 7 of 9 do create a unique rapport,
yes,
in the season that they were together, because she kind of takes over the Kess role when she finally gets off the show. So I can agree with that. They're kind of both together seem to be, because you get part of a personality that isn't really human and someone who really is human but is being stripped away from a collective. And like you said, the Doctor is actually just a set of subroutines and shielding and
yeah, and it's kind of fun almost in a sense, like not to downgrade the Doctor, but it's almost kind of interesting because sometimes it is almost like the blind leading the blind, because you have a person who isn't human trying to teach her how to be human herself, but then she fights him back and goes, well, what about you, Doc? Kind of thing. Some moments.
Totally, and that's going to roll right into kind of the part of the show that we kind of predicted, which is kind of the degradation of characters, and we kind of talk about too with F-bombs and modern dialogue, right? So this show has a lot of F-bombs and a lot of modern dialogue, slang, that kind of stuff. It's going to decay quickly, but that ties into the sense of the decay part. We were talking about characters resetting, and a lot of characters definitely reset to what they were before if we see them in the show. But what I didn't expect so much is a lot of retreading the same ground as Next Generation and Voyager. A lot of the storylines when it comes to synthetic rights and the rights of, essentially artificial intelligence is already covered in the Next Generation. In fact, Voyager, there was multiple episodes on both those talking about the right of authorship to Data when he created something. And same thing with the Doctor, his right of authorship as being a hologram. So it's kind of weird that they're, again, just retreading the same story ground in pretty much the whole story in the
most basic level.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
A childish level, not even retreading something, but with a new complexity or a new dynamic. It's done so poorly, you almost don't even notice it.
Yes, because the show tackles, let's say, synthetic rights, but the problem too in it is that the idea that Data the Borg couldn't even reprogram Data. Like the Borg were trying, and they're like, we can't reprogram it. We're just going to try to convince you now. And in this show, some Romulan operatives are able to reprogram thousands of these synthetics to murder people and destroy this Federation fleet. So I kind of go, is this, they're trying to say those were the synthetics and independent thought. And I go, were they? Because if they're so easily reprogrammed that they're able to reprogram all these androids, essentially, I'm going to call them what they really are, and robots, and with a face, and go, well, were they actually independent thinking things? Because otherwise you couldn't reprogram them so easily. So again, it's a muddly ground.
I don't think, having just watched that trashy episode, none of the other androids.
Or not second. I think the second.
Well, yeah, both actually, because I needed a refresher of pain, and the only one of the androids gets the message. They as far as let's just say they don't show and or say that she sent the message to the rest of them. The one evil gold Soji is the only one who got the message.
Oh no, I'm talking about.
She's the only one who got the program.
I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about the one on.
Oh, you're talking about
Mars.
when they mass murder everyone on Mars.
Yeah, gotcha. Mars. No,
Gotcha.
If you're talking about a god tier race that they were trying to say these ones were, this was an S tier type alien, race that are synthetics. I have no problem with them being able to reprogram somebody. That's irrelevant, and I don't think they reprogrammed her. Gotcha. I think she was. It's not like she walked in and she was super friendly with the humans. She came in with the air of distrust, dislike the moment we saw her on screen.
Superiority, even.
Like she came
really
in. Yeah, she was like she. They didn't even try to make her like, oh, this is a little different one. They telegraphed her so hard of being the first one that could convert that it screamed it. Like like honestly, you would have thought she already had the message, and she's like, haha, the final piece to kill you all, the code to open up the portal.
Right.
It wasn't
exactly.
like again, that's kind of that same critique was on the Romulan girl, incest sister, where they show a scene with they show a scene of her prior getting the message, and she wasn't any more pleasant than before. And I kind of thought that they were going to be like, oh, maybe a little motion, maybe, kind of allowing the personality change. You touch this and you kind of skirt your personality. But no, she was the same. So it's kind of that weird thing there, the trend. I don't know why they did that. If you're going to have something that's such a, groundbreaking, essentially paradigm shifting moment, you would think that you'd at least have your character feel like a different character before and after.
Yeah, you would want to show that within the character's reactions, as well as, a story, instead of half of them just rip their, claw at their faces like they're having a really bad trip, and kill themselves. And then she just stands there and goes, okay, yeah, let's get this crap going. And you're like, oh, not even like a, like her sitting there for a second, like huddled in, kind of like, that broken down mass for a second, and the girl walking up and her kind of like freaking out. Like her swiping at her or something like that. So you'd see this different and change in emotions, or like, I'm dealing with learning this information that I think is, life altering. Yeah. And instead it's like, it's like, oh, you're telling me that this happens, the whole universe dies? Cool. It's Tuesday.
All good.
What's for dinner? Tacos?
Well, cool. Base synthetic bath salts, man. Things will kill you.
Right.
Telling you, man.
One of our first predictions that we talked about was old character cameos, and that they'd be short and small. And I would say I'm surprised they didn't bring back more characters. We got our Riker cameo, which was a whole episode, in the end finale as well. But most of the other stuff, if there was, and again, Seven was a cameo in all reality, because she didn't really play a part into the story. Like if you removed her character, she does nothing actually, because on the
she saves Elrond. I mean, I think that's about it.
Yeah, but he's a character we didn't need.
But you didn't need him either. Exactly.
Yeah, and since the story, because the Borg cube, all it did was come in and then scare off
land
and they didn't use it again. So the Borg ended up being a cameo too.
Drop that Rubik's cube on the desert and leave it there.
Yeah, so the Borg kind of ended up being a cameo too. And then we also kind of run into the minimal Picard time, which were I was expecting far less Picard, to be honest.
So was I. Yeah.
But at the same time,
no, you'd mentioned that.
He was.
I mean, it's titled Picard. I would have been very taken aback if then he would have been a second character.
Well, his character spent more time on screen than we would have expected, but
he's less of a character than he was in TNG.
Well, yeah, he's an echo of an echo. I mean, he's not even really, Jean-Luc Picard. He's, people talk about Jake Skywalker. He's Jake Picard. I mean, that's who this person is.
I would say that
it's John Luck Pickard.
Yeah, I would say though too in this one, he doesn't. He definitely is brought along with the current of the story versus being the driver of it. Like he drives the beginning a little bit, but it kind of falls into, once it starts just kind of flowing with it. He kind of falls into the background once to get off Earth almost. Again, which kind of falls the next one a little bit, which is iconic locations. So we got Starfleet Academy, we got Starfleet. Not as many iconic locations I thought, because we only left Earth.
There is one iconic location I will give them, but it's also a very nerdy one for just everyone. It's actually that that little area where Raffi was at when Picard shows up to like meet her. That's the rock face that where Kirk fought the Gorn. And it's used in almost every single Star Trek series ever. It's that little area in California where they used. Now again, that's not giving them actually in storyline iconic place, but that's a nostalgic just because. But it was a bummer to see it there too, though, because then they had it be where Raffi's living, and I'm like, oh, that sucks.
That's a clever use for it.
Dad and I had a conversation about that because he recognized it immediately since they drove past it all the time for the last few months. And we were talking about it. I mean, Everyone knows that thing exists. You don't even have to be a real Star Trek fan to know that's there. I mean, it literally is marked. It has signage and it says "Come see." I mean, it's not like, oh, this isn't like 1974 where you're like, oh, that kind of looks like the rock face that William Shatner fought the Gorn, and then someone goes, oh, that's actually where they shot it. Everybody knows that. It's not a mystery. So I wouldn't give them any credit for it because...
No, I don't give them credit for it.
Wasn't a credit. It was saying locations. It was just saying locations.
Location that was there. And at least it's always nice to see it. I guess it's kind of like, as a Star Trek fan, even if it's not, it's always kind of fun to see that little area when it just shows up, just because it gives you a little smile, even though...
Well, actually, that rolls really well in...
was bad.
That rolls right into the next one, which is maximum nostalgia moment. So it kind of was a combination. It was a nostalgia moment, right? The nostalgic location mixed in with a kind of a iconic location, so it's kind of a mixture. I was actually surprised there wasn't as much nostalgia berries in this show. There was little things here and there in it, but they weren't. Unfortunately, in some cases, they weren't going for a Rise of Skywalker level of nostalgia where they're like, here's Chewie's medal, here's a thing that remember this one time, here's an X-wing, let's throw this in here, remember this call sign, let's add it.
Remember when we saw the Death Star? Remember when we were at the Chewbacca? Remember when we were at the Millennium Falcon?
Remember the old stormtroopers? Yeah, I remember them. No, they're really old stormtroopers.
Right. Transporter references. Actually, we didn't have any transporter accidents that I can think of.
Nope.
Which was surprising. And they
they must have fixed those in the last 50 years.
I said, this was one that I did call on the opposite side from. I don't remember how much you said there was going to be nostalgia, Philip.
I think you were the odd one off on that one.
I know for Westfox, there was thinking a lot, and I remember for myself, I said, I don't believe there's going to be that much. I don't think they really wanted to pull from it, and I almost wish that I could have, because honestly, my hope was I didn't want them to pull from it because I thought that they would have pulled too much and it would have been very on the level of Rise of Skywalker, where you're like, okay, you don't have a good story, but I'm so glad you have to try to throw in all the little nostalgia moments, so I try to feel good. The sad part is, I almost wish they would have had more nostalgia moments, but it's just a bad script, so it doesn't matter. And that's the thing about it. It's like nothing's going to, nostalgia or not, it's not going to fix, crap.
Well, you also have to remember, too, when it comes to nostalgia, in Star Trek, there's only 6 movies that came beforehand. I mean, what exactly about, say, 3 years of
10 movies.
The original series, 7 years, what?
There's 10 movies.
I'm talking, no. Well, when you're doing nostalgia, you can't include your own movie. Of course, I mean, that's just the new ones. You can't include what you're doing in the current generation. What I'm talking about nostalgia is you'd have 6 movies, you'd have the originals, and you'd have the prequels if you really felt the need to. On the other hand, it's harder to do something nostalgic necessarily if you think about through the entire years of Star Trek. You have 3 years of the original series, 7 years of TNG, those movies. You have 7 years of Voyager, 8 years of DS9, 7 or 8 years that they have a weird number.
I couldn't tell you,
wasn't it?
No, I think it was 7. I think it was 7.
Oh, it's 7. Okay, so it's like, okay, where do you go? Where do you go to be nostalgic necessarily? You'd have to find the famous episodes, the ones that people really, really liked, right? A Q reference, some of the Data references, stuff like that. Those are the things you'd have to go back, because there are, of course, episodes and certain times where people are like, wow, that was one of the best. Your top 15, say, TNG episodes are the things you'd have to reference to be nostalgic. And for them to actually do that, they actually would have had to have watched them at the least.
Yeah, there's 7 seasons.
Well, that's true. They actually have to be aware of the Star Trek universe, which clearly these writers
that's
not.
More what I would say. That's what I would say is it's not so much the nostalgia part's not pulling from the best episodes per se, but it's knowing the fandom in a way, or knowing the canon and the lore and what happened before, and going, what are kind of high points inside of it? Maybe not a specific story, but like I said, the joke of like the red shirts or so, there's little things that go, oh, okay, that's funny,
right?
That go into it. The nerdy talk part. That's one of our things that we said, there'd be a lot of nerdy talk.
Why wasn't there any tribbles in this?
Another element that we talked about that we thought they would have is the adult conversations, F-bombs, modern dialogue, that kind of stuff, and that was definitely super heavily prevalent in the show, especially the F-bombs.
Especially in the last episode. They dropped the F-bomb like 4 times in the last episode. I'm like,
not characteristic. And again, modern dialogue that feels out of place for the space, where you're like, who is that? They're not going to say that. It's like saying tubular in 2020. And you're like,
exactly.
You can tell it's going to sound really bad. And that goes into a little bit of, well, then also, I'm going to run these three together really quickly because they're just simple. We just hit them. And so lots of sexy time. There's definitely a decent amount of sex on the show. Nothing gratuitous, ironically, surprisingly, since they already tried to make it an adult show with all the F-bombs, but thank God we didn't need more of that. And then the main part of the last one, which is kind of a combination of stuff, which is the writers don't care about Star Trek. And that was prevalent because, we talked about throughout the show, which is they wanted to write Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings and that kind of stuff. They wanted to write the Game of Thrones, edgy Game of Thrones show where everyone dies, everyone has sex, and everyone cusses. That's kind of what.
And everyone loves their sibling a little bit too much.
Yeah, they just wanted a little too much of that, and I don't. Again, that was a. I mean, it really He said it really takes away a lot from the show because they said they don't care about the show, and they've even said it. They don't care, and they said things where they're like, oh, we don't care about canon. It's too hard to write canon. It's so hard to follow canon because there's so many books and novels and stuff. And I'm like, we don't care if you might break a little bit from a book, but follow the TV shows. Because
at least
I would say
that's simple.
Most of your audience
that's the basic. If the medium is TV shows, then you should be following what TV shows came before. If you're doing movies, then you should at least follow what movies came before. If you're doing books, then at least try to follow what books in your own series that came before. If crossing medias and you don't want to mix up with it, fine. I don't care. I don't mind that at all because it's its own medium. Just like people who go, well, the new Marvel Cinematic Universe doesn't follow the comic books. Well, that's why it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe, not the Marvel comic book universe.
Right.
Like, I don't have a problem with that.
Here's the thing. Again, if you can't keep up with one of them, pick the one that's the most relevant. You don't be like, well, we couldn't keep up with everything that's ever been done in Star Trek. Then first of all, then you should just go away and not write the show either because you always don't care about it. Yeah. There's not that much material. I mean, there's this one book that someone wrote. Okay, cool. Scrap the books, scrap the comics, follow it, 24 seasons or whatever of the show and just focus on that. And if you keep true to that, most people are going to be like, good job, especially nowadays. Yeah. I mean, if you kept true to all that kind of stuff.
A perfect example of that is the dumpstering of B4. I mean, at the end of Nemesis, they clearly were forecasting that Data wasn't dead. And continuing off of that, while I would agree with you, the countdown, they did have the countdown comic, and I double checked this. It is Captain Data. He's running the ship. He's running the Enterprise, and as before. Now I could understand you saying, "Hey, we're not going to use that," even though it's weird that they would have kept the Romulan destruction, but then they wouldn't have kept everything else that was going on during that time period, like Data.
That's because they love the floating planets, man. That production company, that group of people, they have certain trends they love doing. They love blowing planets up. They love the nihilistic style of writing. They love bringing up silly politics. I mean, that would go into that part right here where, synthetic rights we talked about. And again, they try to do that, but at the same time, they don't delve into it in an intelligent way because we don't really understand what these synthetics are. It's not because the reason they say they're scared of them is because essentially someone could reprogram them, right? I mean, in the end, that's the conundrum is, wait. And again, what organization, the whole reason, again, that's what the poor writing is. What organization go, we had a bug, so we're just going to scrap everything. That's like if a Federation Starship warp drive had a bug in it, and they're like, well, we're scrapping all warp drive forever. Never going faster than the speed of light. Yep. Done.
Yeah.
Well, to talk to the nihilism, I wrote a little note about that. There's one thing to write a nihilistic story where nothing in the story, it's like, man, the characters feel that nothing matters, everything's terrible, and it's like, why are you doing this to me? But when your story is literally, when your writing is nihilistic, when everything you write is literally meaningless from moment to moment, you write something just so the characters can have dialogue, and then it has no influence on the rest of the show, or it's completely reversed within 15 seconds of going on. I mean, they've actually brought the whole idea of a nihilistic storyline to a whole new level. Basically, you're just listening to the equivalent of, in music, noise. It's like atonal music. It doesn't have a key. It doesn't have a signature. It doesn't have anywhere it's going. And that's what this was like listening to. One character one day will say A, and then the next day the character will say B, and you'll say, well, that seems out of character. It's like, no, it doesn't, because nothing matters. The characters don't matter. What we're trying to tell you doesn't matter. We can do whatever we want, anytime, anywhere, anyhow, and it just doesn't matter as long as you recognize these are the same names. I mean, they might as well not even keep their names anymore, realistically.
I believe
that's how I felt.
I believe Westfox and I discussed it on, I don't know if it was that final episode, Southbound, but when we were discussing saying how the certain synthetics were pretty much props. I mean, they're just doors, stop people from coming through. I would pretty much say at this point, I would say that all the characters in this show are props. They're not characters. There's no depth to them truly in general. None of those characters ever are anything more than a one-dimensional character that, like you said.
Well, let's talk about that.
They're just meant to push. They're just meant to be dialogue deliverers.
Well, let's tackle that because it's a good point. We're pretty much wrapped up that part of it. So let's kind of wrap up the show on this part of it. It's kind of went right where I was hoping to go, which is you look at where the character started and ended. So look at Picard. Where did he start? Where did he end? Is there any really difference in him?
Other than he's synthetic?
Other than physiologically? No.
Like he didn't learn anything. Now, granted, the problem with Picard, again, as the character, is that in Star Trek Next Generation, he pretty much is a paragon character, right? He's almost a Gandalf. Like he doesn't, like his learning is minimal. He's more of a teacher in Next Generation.
Yes.
Like he's guiding the other characters to be better. But that makes sense because he was a captain. And he wasn't like a green captain. He was an established captain that had been around for a while. So it made sense. And he was the flagship fleet captain. So it makes sense he's going to be the older, wiser character who doesn't know every answer.
I have to discuss about that later.
Well, yeah.
Specifically about flagships.
No, we'll get into that. Yeah.
I'll talk about it a little bit later. I have to punch up against Screen Rant again because they're being shills.
Oh, I'm sure. So
shock.
So then we look at like a character like you can't really use Data as a character arc because he doesn't really exist in it.
Nope.
He's a kind of broken character. But you look at like Seth,
dead, and then he becomes deader.
You could actually argue that final scene in the last one, Data's character is by far the most moving and realistic character. It's kind of like when Kirk said that Spock was the most human after his death. It's funny. You almost get that sense. You're like, it's really weird because he's only on there for about 15 seconds, but he's the only one who almost stays relatively consistent in his in the character of a character.
Yeah, other than I would say Riker's pretty close to being the same character.
I would agree. I think Frakes did a great job. Actually, when he showed up in that final scene and he makes his little smug remark to the Romulan captain, I was like, he just picked up his character. I mean, it was like he never dropped it. Well, it was like, that's...
And again, the failing of his character wasn't the failing of him as a captain or the actor. The failing of him was the writing of them not dealing with a giant spy / just killer of Federation citizens, letting them get away.
Not to mention,
Romulan bastard, you killed my son.
In space. Yeah. All the different ships like loading up their disruptors and their phasers, and they're all staring at each other. I'm like, what is this? What is this? 1776? We're all gonna line up and start shooting at each other. What is that?
What you didn't notice, Philip, is on one of those ships, there's a prisoner from someone else who's looking out at the bursting red rockets, and then writing a new song for the Federation.
Right. Seriously.
So,
or for the synthetic
magic hand devices. Those are fun. Magic hand devices.
Let's move on to next character. So, Raffi has no real character arc, and in fact, she's awful. Actually, she's awful because she just jumps around all over the place.
Well, and this was one that I called on those. Well, I called this on the predictions too, because this was one that I called saying that I doubt that, considering that either all the character development was either going to be based off of whatever comics came before. But I remember calling it out on our prediction saying, I'm not going to care about any single one of these characters because there's not going to either be any development in the show itself or whatever development was in the show was going to be happening in comic books before. And I think that holds true for every single one of the characters. The closest one that I ever got to a chance of maybe going, hey, I might have liked you, but then you never did anything with was Captain Rios, was Chris.
I'd agree. I don't think, that's, like I said, is there a character in the show that developed?
No.
Well, one developed into a murderer. She changed a bit.
Yeah, that's the only character that flip. But she's a flip flop character, so
she doesn't develop. Because you can't say she develops because after the moment she kills it and then gets the blood out of her, she's immediately back to her pleasant, smiling self in the next episode, and then she's making out with her new boyfriend.
Yeah. And what the hell, Chris?
I can't believe.
Come on, man.
It's funny
for
we
blonde
talk about
murderers.
I agree with you, Christopher, in that. Yeah, I couldn't care less about Jirani and Elnor and Agnes. I don't
even care about Seven. I don't even care about 7 of 9 in this at this point.
Well, see, this is what I was going to say. Actually, the most disappointing thing about the show is that they took 2 characters. I was never hot for Picard. William Shatner has always been my captain, as far as I was concerned. He was always number one in my book. But it is sad because it's one thing to keep a character static, but watching the fall of Picard was kind of annoying, and also the fall of 7. I mean, you actually made me not want to like a character that I actually really, really enjoyed in a previous show. And to your point, the one character that I thought had an opportunity to shine, being the Rios character with the megalomania of the different holograms and all that stuff, and the opportunities that could have been in his character. He seemed to be honorable. He seemed to have some bit of integrity. And then they decided, just kidding. He made a mistake on the ship, didn't sign, and now he likes a murderer for no reason. And you're like, okay, well, if this is the guy who's going to whine and cry and drink himself to death because his captain committed suicide after murdering someone, and yet make out with someone who just cold-blooded murdered someone in his ship not even 24 hours ago, I mean, you're talking about a person who's just as mentally ill and unstable as everyone else on that ship. And it might as well be One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Next Picard. I mean, gosh, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Like I said, there's not much development there. So we'll just kind of, like I said, wrapping into the main space.
What does that even mean?
Christopher, well, I was going to say last little thing. So what's the worst part for you on this series? Like, what's your thoughts on this series? I guess your summary thoughts on what... your review. What's your review of the show, this series?
I guess I would say my review and my biggest faults that I take with the show is a lack of direction. Just in simple. I mean, it's just that this is there wasn't a story here, and I know we're gonna discuss that far greater. But it's like half of the things that half of the episodes you could have cut out of this because there's no point to them. Things that we thought were supposed to be something
that's great. Hit that. Let's hit on that. Let's hit on that. The story elements that goes into it. What are story elements that don't matter? Because I'm sure most of them I'll agree with you on. We can just hit those as we're going through it because
all of them.
Okay. Well, I mean, here I'll go. Well, starting off from the first episode. I mean, I don't.
These caretakers are worthless. The interview with the TV people is completely worthless.
No, that one's okay. That was set up. That's just telling stuff. I would say when I'm saying like things that are worthless is like the side quest to pick up Elrond Jr.
Elnor, worthless. Yes. The Borg cube, worthless.
I think in general having the first instead of finding Soji in the beginning and having Dodge and just having her die in the first episode was pointless. There really was no reason. Why? What was going on with every time that Soji or Dodge? Well, hold on. What happens with every time that Soji or Dodge, or at least Dodge, Soji would speak to her mother? We never understand what that actually was and why she was being knocked out and
Maddox actually explains it. Maddox did explain that.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he said he programmed the AI. He programmed the AI mother to keep her at ease if he had to, and so she wouldn't be activated. He again, a throwaway line, but
it was like implied that she was thinking.
Yeah, but, and to your point, I'll let you continue. I just wanted to say, keep memory, like you said, it's worthless that they runs into Soji first and she dies, or Dodge first and then she dies, and yet there's a critical element to that entire situation that completely ruins the end of the show. So not only was it irrelevant, they planted a seed there that causes the end of the show to be completely.
Which one's that?
Contradictory.
What do you mean? Okay.
So as I had mentioned to Westfox previously when I was chatting with him about this, I actually relatively liked the little story that Picard was able to say goodbye to Data officially, quote unquote. I actually thought
did enjoy that
if it wasn't for the rest of the show, yeah, that was actually rather touching. However, I said it was funny on 2 levels. Here, Data says, I'd like to die. I'm tired of having my mind just being warped around in this quantum realm. The last bit of my, we'll say soul for the sake of argument, whatever.
Right.
Of rattling inside of there. So I first thought it was funny because he's talking about part of the human experience is dying. And yet they were going to give Picard an immortal body just recently. So I thought that was a funny, brainless juxtaposition.
Well, they gave him a mortal. No, they gave him a mortal body.
I know. However, when you're looking at the situation, the only reason they did that, as we pointed out, was because Patrick Stewart is eventually going to want to stop, or may actually die. So they gave themselves an out. But let's be honest, the idea that they could magically make the body algorithmically deteriorate as it normally would without the illness is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. It's just gobbledygook. So you're like, oh, okay, duh. But in like I said in the story, Data's saying what's important about being human is be able to die, and then they're going to Picard an immortal body. It's like, did you guys see what you read? Did you see what you wrote, you morons?
Right.
But the second part that I thought was interesting about that, at first when he made that comment, he goes, hey, just, please let me die. And I thought, that's weird, because he doesn't explain to him how that's going to happen. And I was like, that's really weird. So they say, oh, they just pull his data streams out. Here's the problem with that. Soji, or Daj, before she died, when she got activated, had partially Data's memories. Soji also has part of Data's memories. To really let Data die, you would have to kill every single android that is based off of Data, who is using his positronic information overlay by which they have his memories. That's how Daj was able to say, I know that Picard is safe, and that's how I know Soji said, oh, don't worry, Data loved you. He's in every single one of those androids. So removing him from that section didn't do squat. He's rattling around in every other android's brain.
Yeah, and I think, you're not wrong, but you're also overthinking something that's so stupid across the point, which is they're cloning entire memories of what they are off of one, essentially. It's like taking, gigaquads, we say terabytes, but, data's memory would have been, pentabytes, right? Trillions of terabytes, theoretically, with data inside of what made data and memories. And then you would put that and be like, here, download this onto a 64 megabyte USB. And then we're going to clone your memory because we duplicated that. Like, it doesn't even, like I said,
think about it this way. It's even more painful because, see, in that little computer, he had that beautiful quantum simulator. Now he's rattling around in a 100 by 100 square foot section instead of Soji's head. So now he's even in a greater purgatory than it already was.
I think
so basically, Data is being punished for trying to save Picard because he's an ass. So, congratulations, Picard.
I think
writers.
you're overthinking that one because it's so nonsense. What you're saying is so nonsensical to me that I'm like,
what do you mean nonsensical?
Because the reason he was inside of that was they actually were running a kind of a purgatory simulation for him based off that original material. The later stuff is not like this.
What you just said was nonsense.
Well, I know.
What later material?
It
it's
makes
all
no
nonsense.
Sense. It is all nonsense. So it is. There's our nerdy talk, right? It is. They brought him back in a way that didn't need to be brought back because they had B4, but they could have been, we based off this one, which is the B4 data, which would have been, it's not as advanced as the data, but it doesn't matter because the whole point is these things are pretty freaking advanced anyway. But
exactly.
Meeting the main point though, which was going back now, like you took us off topic.
You know what? You just landed on something there.
What?
Westfox. So the whole
B4.
Yeah, the whole Vash Narada gang. Their whole idea is to make sure that there wouldn't be any synthetic design. Can you explain to me then, if they were doing that so well, how Remus, the Riemann clone, was able to make something even as advanced as B4, even though he wasn't as advanced as Dr. Soong? If the Vash Narada were so hell-bent against synthetic life being created in the Romulan space?
That's actually a good point. I totally forgot that B4 was actually made.
That's right. He was made. He was not made by Soong. He was made by the Romulans.
That's you are correct.
No, was he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Because he wasn't a Soong. And that's why
he was. They dumped it. He even says, he goes, I planted it there because that's why they put it on there, so it would get collected on the ship, so it would go around and do its hackery, but they already knew about that because Data had figured that out. So it's weird how they were able to get that done under the Vash Narada there, but apparently they must have missed it.
Again, goes to the major point that the writers never watched a single episode or movie of Star Trek, or at least they don't care. I mean, it's either ignorance or it's
Patrick Stewart shot a couple hundred episodes of that show, and he didn't care enough either.
Care. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, because the only times he pulls from things are the only few things that he pulls from is Best of Both Worlds for TNG, and pretty much First Contact. I mean, that's mainly the things that Picard pulls. Any of his of anything that they try to pull into the shows is pretty much from that movie, and then maybe those few episodes of TNG, and then they try. And I know I've seen the articles where someone's like, "Oh, they mentioned an old TOS alien." I'm like, I don't care. I'm sorry. Like,
right.
Get over it. Like, I'm sorry. Unless they're saying, that somehow they're talking about like, oh yeah, some other ship got caught in a Tholian web, then I might go like, oh.
Well, okay. like you're pointing out, just because you can scrape out some piece of minutia in the weeds doesn't.
So I have to correct you guys. He was planted there by the guy for the Romulans, but he was created by Dr. Soon.
He was created by Soon.
Yeah, he was a prototype.
Where does it say that Where does it say that in the movie?
Well, I'm reading this on Memory Alpha right now, so it's at least most accurate.
I want time. I want the time period with which that says.
You have to go back and watch the terrible movie Nemesis, and then you can tell. We can discuss it. But the point is, going back to the main point, because we got way off topic there and it just got silly, which is the relevant part to the story. And you're bringing up too specific, Philip. I was saying more along, and I think you too, Christopher, a little bit. But I was saying more like almost you have entire episodes that don't matter.
Oh yeah, I agree.
He said that.
I agree.
Shepard said that.
Like I said, we go down. The Elrond episode doesn't matter. The Picard,
the William Riker episode doesn't matter.
Yeah, the William Riker episode doesn't matter.
Yeah, the Nepenthe episode doesn't matter.
Sun Cloud. What was it? Cloud City didn't matter.
Cloud City.
Two of the episodes. Two of the episodes on Earth didn't even matter. I mean, he runs into. I mean, the whole doctor scene, the whole collecting my crew scene, the whole meeting with somebody scene. It's like, oh, I'm not going to help you. Just kidding. I'm going to come with you.
Well, those do matter though. See, I disagree with you. They're not well executed, but they do matter. Because if you go,
they are trying to build.
I'm saying they're relevant to the story. See, you're missing what I'm saying.
What does Raffi do at the end that would be vital for her? She accomplishes absolutely nothing. Her character doesn't need to be around.
I'm not saying they're good characters. I'm saying that the point is
her character doesn't need to be around. She doesn't do anything.
She had to introduce them, at least in the story. I'm saying in the story, you're going way too specific. I'm saying in the sense of you can't compare the sense that Picard goes to Federation and says, hey, there's a problem here, and there's someone just got murdered on top of Federation headquarters, and talking to the Admiral there, compared to a giant character arc with Elrond Jr. and them not even being relevant in the story. They spend a whole episode of them going to the Romulan planet there to get him off of it. Like, that's not even I'm talking like there is giant chunks of
high level things
but even overall. Smaller ones. Okay, the whole story with Raffi, you want to bring up Raffi. Okay, I agree, her character sucks.
Her son moment is pointless.
Yeah, her son, we have a 5-minute scene with her talking to her son and his wife and the baby, and they're having a grandson that goes nowhere after that. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like there's like
just
her existence.
Like every scene with Narek every scene with Narek and Daj is pointless. Because even the information he extracts from her was completely worthless information that you can never use to extract information from a planet location.
You're wrong. You're wrong because you're taking that the scene sucks and saying it doesn't matter. You have to have a story still. You still have the character.
No, it didn't matter because it didn't produce anything. You learn nothing about the characters, either of them.
I'm not
other
saying
than
that
he's horny for androids, which
but was it setting up for something for later for the story? At least there's a sense of that it is trying to get to a next part of the story. It's not creating good character development. It's not creating a good story, but it is. You couldn't not have the scene of them giving the information if they need to have the information. It's not saying it's done well, but you have to have the information be given to go to the next part. That's what we're trying to say.
It should have been edited better.
There's things in this film that have nothing.
He doesn't participate in anything in the even where you think he's going to be the one to save the day to like get the whole beacon destroyed and everything. Agnes and Picard escape by themselves, and somehow they make it to the ship without running.
Who are you talking about? You're talking evil Romulan.
Yeah,
he got the location of the planet from her through. Again, he got the information out of her. Again, it was a stupid scene the way they did it, but it still existed that needed to get the information out of her. He broke her programming. Like, you got to break down the part of it. You're missing the point. You're getting stuck.
Okay, so he's an entire show, and he only usefully does something for 10 seconds,
But you have to have some level of build up in it. You can't just have him pop up at the episode 7 and be like, "Hi, there's this Romulan spy. This happens to be on this thing. Oh, and I interrogated her. Done." You still need some
there could have been better ways to. Okay, fine. If we're not arguing better ways to go about it, after that happened, she was worthless. Okay, after he was there, after he found that information and gave it to his sister, his participation was 0.
Well, we didn't say that. We're not. Yeah, we weren't arguing that. Again, I'm saying there's major points of like 10 minutes as parts of the show that don't matter. That's what we're talking about. You're trying to break down. Go, oh, this sucks. Well, we know it sucks.
Well, realistically, if we're going to use that as our things, we could probably eliminate 85% of everything we saw and consolidate it into a 2-hour episode, into a 2-hour movie is what we could have just watched.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say 2.5 hours, 3 hours, you could pad it out and squeeze it. Because granted, again, I'm not disagreeing with you that the scenes with her and him suck, because especially since they go way too often to it, right? Every episode,
yes,
they're like, oh, we got to do a 2-minute scene with them having sex and talking about their feelings. Not really. Again, they are not developing characters in any way that matters. You know, at the end, they even try to make it like, oh, he really loves her, and he's trying to trick her, but he really wants to murder her.
I care about you. Let me help you.
You know, that kind of stuff. You know,
the Ramda character. How about the Ramda character? She was worthless. That was meaningless. You don't learn anything from her.
Okay, there we go, and say the subplot of Romulans being assimilated and then making the Borg crazy and the Borg thing. The Borg, generally the Borg thing.
Well, I would say most of the Borg stuff is kind of pointless.
Yeah, it was irrelevant.
We spent too much time there. It's okay to have characters existing inside of the space and she's doing something, right? It's okay to have the characters. This is their life. She's a scientist. She's on a Borg cube and learning and dismantling the cube and learning about it. And they're trying to reclaim Borg that have been assimilated. That's fine. The problem is they spent so much time doing it that it doesn't matter anymore.
I'd say here's what the big problem what they did is they have these little things that we wouldn't have had a problem with it if they actually would have stayed little, if they were just basic stuff. But everything they wanted to, like you said, everything gets a 5-minute scene to try to make it seem important, but then there is no payoff to it later. You know, you keep going back to the Borg cube and seeing the reclamation of the Borg, and you assume that there might be something more to it. In the end, they try to fight the Romulans and they all get blown out of the Tesseract, you know, or you know, the in the cube. So there's nothing.
It's kind of like a reverse hybridization that's terrible of episodic versus long story arc. Because when you do episodic television, since the thing that happened beforehand doesn't matter other than just character development, you kind of just say, oh, that was a story, and you learn about characters and stuff like that. It was like they were trying to force feed you character development in little stories that were worthless, while just barely giving you little crumbs of the actual main overarching story until they finally shoveled it down your throat in the last 35 minutes.
2 episodes.
Yeah. Well, even the showrunners said that, oh, this show would have been better to watch in one sitting, you know, and granted, do you really want to suffer this for one sitting?
8 hours? Can you imagine?
But I mean, and the point of it too is that even we talked about this is not cut up in a way that'd be good for one sitting. Like even the final product is that we keep jumping around. Every episode starts with a flashback. Every episode, like I said, jumps to the Borg cube. They could have done the Borg cube in one of the early episodes, like episode 1 or 2, when they kind of do the whole thing where she's at. And then they could have had her not until episode 4 again, and then episode 7 or whatever when they bring her back. They didn't.
Yes.
We didn't need to get a day. You know, the show turned into the daily update of where the characters are. They're like, this is what's happening now. That you almost see an announcer. You know, like remember the old cartoons with Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Meanwhile, back at the Borg cube. You know,
right? Like Justice League. Yeah, right. Meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice. Yeah,
pretty much.
That's hilarious.
Here at the
Can you explain to me?
Yes.
Can you explain to me how it was possible that Agnes and Picard escaped and ran to the ship, and the Romulan and Raffi ran to the place and didn't run into each other?
I can explain to it. It's the same way they didn't fly the spaceship and just crash it into the tower and destroy it in 2 seconds.
That's literally what I wrote. I was like, wait a minute. If they can fly the ship, why don't they just shoot down the tower?
Or just move it closer. You know, since it's a long walk and this is a time-sensitive imperative. If they're like, hey, we're just going to fly this, 2 miles closer, that saves just walking 2 miles. If you're even at a brisk pace, a 2 mile walk is going to save you, half an hour of time. And we don't know how far away because space in this show does not matter.
Or time.
Distances
don't matter. It took them day and night and the next morning to discuss the Romulan mythology to then destroy. I mean, I couldn't understand what I was watching. I'm like, wait a minute, weren't they just in the ship and now they're outside in the fireplace and now they're back in the next morning and it's daylight?
Yeah. That's an example of a scene there, Philip, that doesn't matter. The sitting around the fire discussing Romulan lore, which we pretty much already had established at this point. That should have been something that maybe the original, again, the caretakers as characters, I think they could have been good, but they didn't use them. So in the sense of unused, like they could have been, they were two older high-level operatives who should have known this lore, right? They could have been like, yeah, there's this legend about this, and they could, when they talk about the whole Vashta Nerada and all that good stuff, they could have used that as a part in there going, oh, this is a kind of legend that they're basing there. We don't really know if they're real or not, but we are in the Tal Shiar. It's not like they're not like just random citizens. They are Tal Shiar agents. And they could be like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's this rumor, and we kind of think that they're doing what they do, and there's this legend that back in the day that, there was these demons and angels type stuff, and bad things happened, and we don't really know, but here's the legend. Like, that could have been something that was brought into episode 2 that would have tied into longer. Now, granted, I think they should have brought them on the ship with them. They should have brought them on the ship with them, and then we could have got rid of the whole side plot with Eldron Jr. These are two trained operatives who obviously know a lot. They know how to use weapons. So bringing this one ninja, crappy sword fighting character along is boring and he's dumb. And I'm sorry, I was hoping that they would turn him past. I didn't think they were going to turn him into comic relief. And not even good comic relief. Like the dumb character who doesn't know
crying
stuff.
At the end, like a little girl.
The crying is painful.
It's such an emasculation of of what little masculinity he had. I'm like,
it's not even that.
It was a painful men crying, but it's not.
There was no reason.
But there was no reason. And again, there wasn't a, like you're saying, Hound. There wasn't a and I'm not trying to say it's like, well, you have to be masculine when you're crying, or you have to be a man. You don't cry.
No, it was completely emasculating. This character had been torn down from this I'm a fighter to I'm a whiner to I'm a little girl to weeping in Seven's. Unless he was trying to, snicky, but weeping inside of Seven's bosom and pants because he's like, you're my friend and I miss Picard. I'm like, well, come on.
The problem with the scene isn't that.
No.
Again, the problem is that it is just such an over-the-top cry. Like, it's like a 5-year-old who wants to... It was just over the top. Ooh, that's painful. All right, I'm sorry whoever listening for your thing.
Yeah, goodness.
So,
Phil, one thing I will add.
Do your wrap up here. Well, let's do
sure.
Do your kind of wrap up here sentence part. I know because we had more, but we probably hit most of it.
So one thing, I
will.
You
guys did. You're fine. We can move on.
I'll give a brief synopsis of my overarching thing. One thing I will say on the other theft side, from a certain corn hub, tentacles, I'm just saying. They're all like coming out.
The Doc Ock, yes. The Doc Ock,
yeah.
Yes.
The Doc Ock. I've seen Cornhub, things like that before.
Thanks, Screen Rant, for sending out a whole article 5 days later after we put a video out saying there were Doc Ock arms. And they're like, man, those Doc Ock arms. I'm like, oh, yeah, Screen Rant. Oh, yeah, you guys were loving them before, but apparently... Like I said, I have something.
I can't. Other than the guy who makes fun of the pitch meetings on their thing, I don't know how they even exist. Who reads their stuff? Literally,
that is the only reason they exist.
Them and comicbook.com.
I mean, they're like.
Haven't you ever seen
comicbook.com?
If you looked at the Screen Rant post instead of YouTube, whenever they post something, everyone just says, "Where's Screen Rant guy? Have him do a video every day. We don't care about your other crap. We want Screen Rant guy. It's hilarious.
Well,
I love reading it.
It's the only funny thing they do, and because everything else is full on like stroking the egos of the studios. They're like, guess why Picard is the best new Star Trek ever produced, and you're like, you can enjoy the show. Not. Okay, I don't think it's a great show, but if you sit there and go, I enjoy this, fair. But you cannot say this is the best.
You're an idiot,
Star Trek.
But yeah, fair. Okay, you're entitled to your stupid opinion.
Well, I mean,
okay. So
go ahead.
Other than Tentacle Shorn, that was what that was. I would say probably the overarching theme over the entire Picard show is just everything was meaningless. It was all designed to create a crew. And the reason I can really justify that is the entire storyline that they built up to is over. The whole issue of synthetics being a problem. Nope, no longer a problem. The whole issue of Romulans being abandoned. Well, apparently they had 218 ships to bring to this planet to go do whatever the flock they wanted. So I'm curious why they won't go collect their own people. Senators sitting on random planets. It seems like this shouldn't be an issue anymore. Picard's now immortal until Patrick Stewart passes or decides to end. There's nothing in the show that's driving towards the next season. All they did was create a story. Most of it was meaningless. What little they did have ends. There's no more issues. There's no more concerns. And now they have a crew. So I would say you could literally skip this first season if you just wanted to start with the second season of Picard, and you would lose nothing.
Well, and I'll tie that to my summary pretty much, which is it's a show that takes a nonsensical storyline. Like they bring in elements that don't make sense inside of the larger story. The characters do things that don't make sense. But at the same time, they do constantly give the characters challenges that then they're allowed to overcome like easily. So Picard dies, he's fixed. The ship crashes, doesn't work. Magical wand fix. There's things throughout the show that they like, oh, there's a hurdle. Oh, we don't know where to go. The girl
we need to stall the Romulans. Magical teleporters. We need to stall the Romulans. Federation magically shows up. I mean, it's mind-boggling.
So the story at first doesn't force the characters to deal with things actually, and then like I said, gives them an easy out. And then at the same time, like I said, the repercussions from what happens before don't really matter because you're like, oh, this, like I said, Seven got hot. There's a whole scene, great scene. We'll talk about really fast, which we'll not talk about long about it. We're just saying, there's Seven gets a sit, pops into the Borg cube, becomes a temporary Borg queen, and they're like, oh, her mission's not yet done. And then that's completely. You think there's gonna be some lasting repercussions? Like she should have been plugged in that thing for maybe an episode and a half, and then when she crashed on the planet, she's like, oh goodness, the thing crashing jarred me out of it or something like that.
Nope,
she pops out, good to go, done, and there's no last repercussions other than the fact that she hooks Romulan bodies off the wall.
And yet they tried to make it important by then, like you said, trying to have this it's an elongated scene, and they have then the dialogue, like you said, Annika's job isn't finished. And you kind of go, well, that makes it sound like there's something going to happen, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of ominous. That kind of seems like that might be a foreshadowing. And then you go,
yeah.
Oh, just kidding. Just land there. And then we had to make sure you were on the Borg cube, so then you could fight the chick and kick her, sir.
Yeah, I was actually highly offended by that scene. I was very upset to find that they murdered a hot Romulan sister. That was unbelievably disappointing. I'm like, really? You're gonna blue ball Narek like that over 10 episodes, and then you just kill his sister? I'm like, that's just wrong, right?
Well, I mean,
what a tease, guys! What a tease!
They forgot it. He actually caught her. That's why we never see him again after that point in the episode. They actually he ran back and
you're probably right. You're making a joke. You're making a joke here, Westfox, but you're probably right. I mean, or she transported out again because she transported the first time, but apparently she didn't transport to a ship because then she's back on the Borg cube in general. So maybe she just has a little site-to-site transporter in general that she just started falling and she went, got about halfway down, kind of pulled a Palpatine, and then halfway, before she hit the blue lightning and the gas comes up, then it went.
Yeah. Oh, it's silly.
You're like,
but yeah, I mean, like I said, we can go way too long into the problems of the show, but that's kind of our wrap up on the stuff. Again, if you're gonna watch it, have a lot of scotch with you.
Just don't.
I mean, like I said, unfortunately,
if you enjoy Star Trek and you want good storylines, even if you're this and I think you made this point pretty well, Hound, about speaking about like saying like they wanted this mix between both episodic and then character driven type storylines, and they did poorly on both fronts. And it's like, and I love these people are saying like, well, there was groundbreaking doing that. I'm sorry, Voyager is already kind of on a level of being both episodic and character driven at the same point.
I think you're.
I would say it's a far closer version of it, to both having a little bit of a continuing storyline, because there is at least a sense of they are trying to get back from the Delta Quadrant. Yes, it's still episodic. Yes, there's still episodes that are kind of just purely based so they can have good character development. But there is still an overlining storyline pushing for. It's not 5-year mission to find strange new worlds and discover new places. So it's not as broad as other Star Trek other Star Trek has been.
You know, a perfect way I think to summarize what you just said, even on the original series' worst episode, are far more digestible than any of the episodes we saw in this show.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what a bad or like TOS episode was that.
Oh, there are some bad ones. there's
yeah,
there are some rough episodes.
I've been
rewatching from them. So
banging on TOS is hard because it's such a different generation of TV storytelling.
Well,
like
there's a bit of camp. There's a bit of camp of going.
True,
going to
but
TOS.
Then there's some that are brilliant. I mean, you can't say that, because then on the other hand, you're like, wow, this one's awful. And yet you could go to another one and say, wow, this actually was way ahead of its time. The way they wrote it, the way it was acted, it's brilliant. So I could say hit and miss. But even then, like I said, one of their worst episodes, some of the like the salt suckers or stuff like that, and things. Or the monkeys.
You don't like the salt sucker girl? Come on. I just watched that episode.
Stupid.
That was great.
Oh, goodness.
Or the monkeys that are throwing the giant... they're like red and white, and they
Galileo,
like throw giant like
the Galileo 7.
The Galileo,
the Galileo 7.
Those ones are terrible.
Well, that one was definitely meant for like supposed to be kind of like a fear factor, type of episode, more of like the
thriller. And again, I would rather watch that.
Well,
I'd rather watch that because the people who bring it to life, William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, DeForest Kelley, they were people who, even in the worst stories, they still brought to life characters that you said, you know what, I could still watch that episode again because I liked enjoying watching them. And that's what you lose here completely.
Well,
every character is unredeemable.
Yeah. There's no rewatchability in this show.
No, that's very true. I think that's a great summary, which is there's nothing redeemable about the characters in it, unfortunately. And go watch the worst episodes of Star Trek, the original series, and they're better than this one. So thank you for joining us today.
I will watch. Wait, because I did want to have my one thing about punching up about Screen Rant. So I do want to get into this.
Yes.
So I think this is one big thing that we didn't talk about in predictions, but I think all of us assume what was going to happen on there was how much there was going to be social media and people carrying the water for the show and trying to say this is great, this is awesome. So at least to the point of, I mean, there was quite a few Screen Rant articles. I know we mentioned some other ones that we've seen before. The Doc Ock one that I just saw, but one that got to me, and I know this one I think will make you guys chuckle and both kind of go, like, just shows again that even the Screen Rant people have no idea what they're talking about. And I bet the writers from Star Trek probably like listen to the Screen Rant people. Okay, so I just saw this article yesterday from Screen Rant that was saying, just remember, guys, the Enterprise wasn't and isn't always the best ship in the fleet. And I went, oh, okay. Let me click on here and see. So they're trying to say that their whole point was saying, now we have the new class of vessel that Riker brings in, which is the Zhang Wei, whatever whatever stupid name they call the ship, the Xing. Yeah, yes, whatever the name of the ship is. So I laughed because they said there and they go, well, like the Enterprise isn't the best ship in the fleet, and I guess these Screen Rant people don't realize that the Enterprise has never been the first ship of its class every time. The original TOS Enterprise is a Constitution. Class. Yeah, it's Constitution class is the original TOS Enterprise because the first ship made was the NCC whatever Constitution. Then when you get to Wrath of Khan, if everyone remembers on there, they have the new class of vessel that's the Excelsior, which then when you find the Enterprise B is called what? Oh, the Excelsior class heavy cruisers. So I laugh that these people on here are so asinine and so stupid.
Yeah, but what is that? What were they trying to argue, though? I mean, I agree with you. You're completely right. But what were they trying to? What was their point in the summation?
For some reason, they were trying to say like, yeah, we, because the Enterprise is always the best ship in the fleet, but now it's no longer not. We'll always remember the Enterprise, and I'm like,
the problem is what you're saying. Here, I'll correct you because that way we'll sum this up quickly. It's always been the flagship of the fleet, is what it comes down to. It's nothing about. It's not only saying it's the newest ship.
More because of the crew. It's because of who's. It's the crew and the people of the ship who have made it the best. Who've become then the flagship. The flagship.
No, well, no. It's now the flagship. You're confused again. You're trying to argue against stupid, which makes it really hard to argue against stupid.
It is really hard to argue against stupid.
The Enterprise is the flagship of the Federation. A brand new
version of a.
Someone has a motorcycle outside, but literally,
we're good.
So essentially what they're saying is, oh, it's not. Why would you? Because what they're trying to argue is, I will sum this slightly fast. What they're trying to argue is, why wasn't the Enterprise there in the last battle? And well, because it wasn't always the most advanced. That's not the problem. Is it's not. It's the flagship. Now, granted, we're talking a situation where they're trying to send the most amount of ships as quickly as possible. It might not be the closest one.
They just stated too how it was a new ship. They just stated, so it's like, well, it wouldn't, like you said, the Excelsior was the original heavy cruiser class. The Galaxy, the NCC Galaxy was the first version of the Galaxy level starship. The Enterprise D is the original Enterprise. The Enterprise E's sister ship is the Sovereign, and it's called the Sovereign class.
And you're also messing up a thing too, where the fact is they're saying there's like 50, we have 200 or 500 versions of the same ship. A fleet of them, so you never have generally your most advanced ship. If it was that new and that advanced, because you're right, like we said, the whole battle thing doesn't make sense because you have multiple models. Anyway, we're gonna wrap up in there because we could talk 10 hours on that topic, and then that's already killing me. We're so long on this anyway.
I don't think I understand what the article is about. Still.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's dumb. Chris's point is they don't know what they're talking about.
Again, yeah, they don't know what they're talking about. Is pretty much what I want, because it's like if they win in the series, what it would have been then is that new ship, and then any of that class would now be called the new, Zhe Vang class cruiser, and then an Enterprise would be one of those classes. Instead, they're kind of being like, well, you do it, and I'm like. Okay, the only one that was actually ever named that was like an NX ship, so like actually a prototype ship, which also is kind of why Enterprise is stupid too, is the NX-01 Enterprise. Is the only time that a prototype ship was actually named an Enterprise, but I don't think it's actually it's not called the Enterprise class.
Yeah. Anyway,
I don't care about Enterprise.
All right, everyone. Thank you for watching us today. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time and have a great day.